This is an AQA Psychology GCSE revision video for the Paper 2 topic of psychological problems with a specific focus on what depression is and what addiction is. So starting with depression, the exam board needs you to know what depression is, how it's different to sadness, and also the two types of depression, which are unipolar and bipolar depression. So clinical depression is a mental disorder which is characterised by low mood and low energy levels. And that's the first thing you need to understand about depression. It's about low mood, so feeling down, feeling sad, but also low energy levels, not wanting to socialise, not maybe sleeping a lot, etc. So the first thing you need to understand is the difference of depression compared to sadness. So this is an opportunity for you to pause the video and to think about 3 things that make sadness different to depression. In 5 seconds, we'll go through the answers. So you might have said that sadness is just a feeling, it's temporary, whereas depression is a mental illness, it's very long lasting in a person's life. Sadness you aren't diagnosed with by a doctor, whereas depression you are diagnosed by a psychiatrist, a doctor or a psychologist. Sadness is often in response to a specific event or trigger, whereas depression there's no specific or obvious trigger. A person can just feel sad and down about everything. And then, of course, sadness is temporary. You can do things to improve your mood. Friends and family can sort of get you up, get you out, doing things to make you feel happier. Whereas depression is much more continuous. It's not temporary, it's long lasting, and it does not get better without treatment, and even with treatment it doesn't get better. So looking at the 2 types of depression, you've got unipolar and bipolar. So if we start with unipolar, I'll highlight that in orange. What you need to understand for unipolar depression is that there are a different host of symptoms. So the key symptoms here are the ones the exam board will expect you to know. But then it's also wise to learn at least 1 or 2 more of the additional symptoms. It's also expected that you understand a person with 2 to 3 symptoms is classified as a mild depression, 4 or more is moderate, and 7 or more is severe depression. So the symptoms of unipolar depression are low mood, loss of interest in pleasure, and reduced energy levels. So it's also advisable that you learn that there are changes in their sleep pattern due to the reduced energy levels, if you could link those. Changes in appetite, decreased self-confidence, reduced concentration, attention. They might self-harm, they might be suicidal, they might have a lot of guilt or a negative view of the future. So I would recommend you just sort of learn the additional symptoms of 4 and 5, changes in sleep pattern and changes in appetite, because you have to learn the 3 key symptoms. Whereas bipolar depression, if we look at that in green, bipolar depression, it is when an individual is experiencing a period of mania for several weeks, followed by a period of depression. So looking at what mania is, that's down here, a manic episode. It's when a person basically has the opposite of depression, where they're very happy, elated or overjoyed. They might talk very quickly, seem full of energy, be very self-important and have loads of great new ideas. So they might just sort of book a holiday randomly. They might also not feel like sleeping or eating. They might sort of spend large sums of money, basically just acting very irrational, very excitable. But then that is followed by a period of depression, which is where they have the symptoms of unipolar depression. So the 2 link in that way. However, of course, with bipolar depression, it is about the manic episode. So again, I suggest you learn about 2 or 3 of those bullet points of what makes a manic episode, because that is the difference between unipolar and bipolar depression. So just to check your understanding, there are a number of different symptoms on the screen. Just have a think, are they unipolar depression, bipolar depression, or could they be both? In 5 seconds, I'll talk through the answers. So the first sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all of them, bipolar and unipolar. Low energy levels, lack of self-confidence, low mood, changes in sleep, changes in appetite. Those are your key characteristics of depression, unipolar depression, which I advise you learn. However, bipolar depression is when an individual can have that manic nature of feeling overjoyed, feeling excitable, feeling really happy. So that's the difference between bipolar and unipolar depression. And those are the characteristics of depression that the exam board expects you to know. Moving on to addiction now. So I would like you to pause the video and make just a brief list, sort of 3 or 4 things that a person could become addicted to. And in 5 seconds, I'll go through the answers. So you might have thought of things like caffeine or painkillers, alcohol, smoking, vaping, phones, gambling. Those are all things that people can become addicted to, because addiction means people need to have or do something. They need to have alcohol or they need to gamble. They need to do it regularly because it helps them to avoid negative feelings, but most importantly, it allows them to experience a buzz and continue on their normal routine. Experiencing a buzz is that key element here of addiction. A person is only addicted if that addiction gives them that buzz, that sense of happiness, that euphoric feeling. So let's see if you can apply your knowledge here to Janine, a 16-year-old student who turns to cannabis occasionally to unwind from stress and manage her insomnia, so put her to sleep. Despite regular use, she maintains a healthy balance with her academics and extracurriculars. She relies on cannabis for relaxation, but not to give her a buzz. Janine recognises the role cannabis plays, but can choose not to have it without suffering too much. So I want you to pause the video. I want you to think about whether Janine is addicted to cannabis or not. So I would say Janine is not addicted, but she's certainly dependent. She engages in cannabis for relaxation, but not to give her a buzz. And we said through the definition of addiction, it is when someone seeks that substance or that thing for a buzz, to feel good, to feel euphoric. Also, she can choose not to have it without suffering too much. So one of the symptoms of addiction, which we'll look at shortly, is about withdrawal. And if you don't have the substance, you suffer, you have headaches, you get irritable, etc. So Janine is not addicted, she's just dependent. So addiction, remember we said it's about that pleasurable thing, leads to harmful consequences, but is done for a buzz or a high. Whereas a dependence, which you do need to understand the definition of, it's about that urge to keep taking a substance or carry on with a behaviour. So someone with a dependency can still lead a normal life, and however, they would still have withdrawal symptoms, like I said, getting irritable, getting headaches, etc. The difference here is that if it becomes needed for the person's buzz, for the person's high, for their enjoyment. You also are expected to know the difference between substance misuse and abuse. So by definition, substance abuse is when someone takes a substance for a personal purpose that's bad, so to get high rather than medicinal purposes. Substance misuse is when a person uses a substance in the wrong way or for the wrong purpose. So when it becomes substance abuse is when the person's intentions are focused on the outcome of mood modification, so to get high or a sense of escape. So someone smoking cannabis for that high or to escape reality is abusing a substance. So let's have a look whether you can apply that knowledge to the case of Mia. Mia is a 25-year-old dentist, started taking sleeping tablets, so that's the substance she's consuming to combat insomnia. She sometimes takes more than the packet said and will mix them with other medicines even though the packet says not to. Over time, this turned into a nightly routine because she struggled with work stress. She started relying on the tablets not just for sleep but to numb herself from overwhelming emotions. The once controlled habit escalated, impacting her job performance and relationships. So is Mia abusing or misusing? Have a think, and in 5 seconds I'll talk through the answer. So hopefully you've identified there's certainly 2 elements here. Mia is definitely abusing the tablets because she's relying on them to numb herself from overwhelming emotions. So I'm changing that to purple to represent that is the abuse. And then I will change in red the misuse, where she's using more than the packet said, which is definitely misusing a substance, and also mixing them with other medicines, which you are not supposed to do. So Mia is a substance abuser and a substance misuser. Thinking about then how we characterise addiction. How do we diagnose addiction? Well, there are 3 characteristics you have to know for the exam. They are in green. The strong desire to use the thing despite knowing the harmful consequences, difficulty in controlling your use of that thing or the substance, and giving a higher priority to the thing or the substance. There is also a withdrawal state and evidence of tolerance. So tolerance is particularly through alcohol or cigarettes, but for any addiction, gambling as well, just that use gives you that buzz, or performing that action, it gives you the buzz. But then the next time you go to use it, you have to keep seeking more to get that same buzz. So the 3 characteristics of addiction that you'll have to know are these 3 in green. So this is an opportunity for you to note down the characteristics and also think about whether you are addicted to your phone. Okay, so to finish, let's see if you can apply your knowledge to Daryl. 4 characteristics of addiction in Daryl's behaviour. Give you an opportunity to pause the video. In 5 seconds, I will go through the answers. Okay, so I'm going to start with the fact that Daryl prioritises the substance. So it says smoking is now the most important thing in his life. So that's definitely one characteristic of addiction. He's continuing to smoke despite the fact he's aware it can cause cancer. That's a second characteristic. He's persisting despite knowing the risks or the harm, the consequences. He's demonstrating withdrawal because he's getting irritated if he can't have one. And he's got a strong desire to use the cigarettes because he always seems to want to have a cigarette. So those are the 4 characteristics of addiction shown in Daryl's behaviour. And that concludes the end of this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it useful.